The conventional wisdom is that you can't put toothpaste back in the tube. That is to say, once the deed is done, there's no taking it back. And this week on the podcast, we're going to talk about a few places where you can't really change your mind once you put some of these things into place. Or can you? We'll talk about some irreversible decisions this week on Retirement Elevated.
Let us help you reach your peak in retirement. It's time for Retirement Elevated with Sean Lee.
Hey everybody, welcome into the podcast. Sean Lee and myself here to talk about investing, finance, and retirement. And of course, we're going to talk about some irreversible decisions as I teased up in the teaser and get Sean's opinion on some of these things. I got a couple ones I want to blow through here and see what he thinks. Technically, I guess a couple of these things have some caveats. We'll dissect that as well. But I think the idea is that you really want to make sure you get this stuff right the first time. So if you've got some questions, need some help, of course, as always, reach out to Sean and the team at elevatemyretirement.com. That's elevatemyretirement.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever podcasting app you like using. Retirement Elevated. My friend, what's going on?
Hey, man, just enjoying spring. It's that time of year where I can't breathe. And,
yeah, me too.
You know, I wake up, just head is full of stuff, and it takes me a little bit to get going now in this time of year. I've noticed, as far as the allergies go and the weather changing. And
you know, I never thought about Utah allergies and stuff there versus like where I'm at, because I guess I always kind of have this mental image of you guys having a lot more, you know, the arid climate and mountains and this, that, and the other. And we, of course, have mountains here in North Carolina, but I have pine trees everywhere, which are just ripe with pollen. So I'm with you there. It's a little sniffly time of the year.
Oh yeah, it's the dust and pollen and, you know, everything else, the grass and all that stuff that comes with it. It takes me a couple of weeks to get
right
to get used to it.
Flonase is your friend.
I'm like the allergy pill every day kind of guy that even in the winter time, just so I don't get hit too hard when the spring comes.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, let's talk about some irreversible decisions. You know, obviously you could choose to or not choose to, you know, take some Flonase or whatever. But let's talk about Social Security. You know, if you start this thing at 62 and you change your mind later on, I mean, really, it's pretty much too bad, so sad, right? Kind of thing. There is technically a little caveat here, and we'll explain that. But it's important to get it right the first time, so you don't got to deal with that.
Yeah, it's irreversible. I mean, with the exception of if you do it within the year,
right? And you got to pay the money back.
You got to pay the money back. You have to do it within the first 12 months. But in this example, if you go to 66, you're like, oh man, I wish I would have waited.
Yeah, definitely too late.
Because I thought I was gonna die at 65. I just wanted to get my money,
right? And
it messes up the plan. May not have been the best decision. When it comes to Social Security. And Social Security is, you know, it is what it is, right? It's a social benefit that you get for money that you put into it. I understand all.
It's our money. I want it back.
Yeah, and I understand. But taking it at the right time is extremely important. And mathematically, we can determine like when the optimal time is to take it.
Yeah.
Just by just running some data and doing some analytics and putting some thought into it. Yeah.
You know, and if you're a golfer, right, we'll use that golf analogy. There is that mulligan Sean kind of described, but it only happens in the first year. You got to pay the money back, and it's a bit more of a cumbersome mess than that most people want to deal with. I've talked with a lot of advisors, and I think maybe just a couple of them have ever had somebody do it. So it's certainly not something that is the norm. So just get it right the first time and make sure that it's part of your cohesive strategy with the rest of your portfolio so that you're making that right decision. Okay. Spousal benefits, if you are lucky enough to have a pension. I don't think there's any mulligans here. I think once you check this box, you're done, right?
You send it in, you lock it down, and that's the decision. And there's a lot of different, at least here in Salt Lake, there's Delta's got a pension, IHC has a pension, Utah Retirement Systems has a pension, and with URS, you have 5 different options that you can choose from, and whether it's spousal benefit or single life or a spousal benefit that reverts to single life if your spouse passes away before you, and really understanding what all those choices are, it is once again is important. Because if I decided that I was, we'll just use URS for example, if I want to protect my spouse, but I also want to protect myself, in the event that my spouse predeceases me, I'm probably going to choose a different option than if I just want to protect my spouse. right? Because we all believe that one spouse is going to live longer than the other, and depending on the family dynamic. But, my wife's grandmother thought that her grandpa would outlive her.
Mm-hmm.
So they made the pension decision based on that. And unfortunately, he predeceased her. And so now you've got to make some other decisions financially if you're not exactly right down the road.
Yeah, and again, you've got to get this right the first time. And I'm sure, many spouses are going to go, yeah, check the box, please, right? Let's make sure we get that spousal benefit. And it's easy sometimes, I suppose, to look at it and see the higher number when if you're just looking at the numbers, you say, well, not checking that spousal benefit option, the pension payout is bigger. I want the bigger number, right? But that may not be the smartest move. So,
well, and, let's say husband passes away because they were the earner, first they were the earner, they had the pension benefit, but they were the healthier one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you never know what health is going to do in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. But when you look at making those decisions, you want to make them based off of, you want to make them based off the numbers, but and longevity and health and all that. But the flip side of that, that you also want to look at the worst case scenario that, hey, say that you get in a car accident in a year.
Mm-hmm.
What does that do to your surviving spouse if you choose the wrong pension benefit?
Very true. Very, very true, right? So we got to get this right the first time. We don't want to have to kind of, quote unquote, try to put the toothpaste back in to the tube. Let's talk about life insurance for our third one here, Sean. I mean, I guess that you can make the argument that you can probably get it just about any time if you're willing to pay for it. But let's be honest, especially in today's world, you're one blood test or diagnosis away from being uninsurable or ridiculously expensive insurable, right?
Right. I mean, life insurance is cheaper as we're younger. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
Sure, right.
And, if I buy life insurance at the age of 25 because I'm starting and I've got a young family, my needs for life insurance are different than if I'm 65. Once I'm 65, maybe it's income replacement or pension replacement, as we talked about. Maybe we're doing some strategic, life insurance retirement planning or whatever it may be. But the one thing that we can't control as we get older is our health. And life insurance is all predicated based off the chances that we're going to die, not the chances that we're going to become disabled or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's, heart issues or diabetes or cancers or things like that, those change our qualification for life insurance. And so when we're younger, it's pretty easy to get life insurance because we're usually healthier. But if we push out life insurance until we exactly need it,
right,
then we're at the whim of our health. And I use, a good friend of mine passed away it'll be 10 years ago this year. And he, business owner, by luck of the draw, before he was diagnosed, he went and got a life insurance policy. Just because his business, some of the funding he was getting required it of him. And he was healthy. Within a year, his health had changed, and he was never going to qualify for life insurance again. So, I mean, the sooner you can get it, usually the better off you're going to be.
That is very, very true. And right. And so you got to think, again, you got to think about, and I know that the question becomes a lot of times for retirees or pre-retirees, hey, do I even need life insurance, at this point? Because the traditional way we think about it maybe is not needed anymore, but there's other ways and other reasons that it might be useful in your overall portfolio. So don't dismiss it. I mean, I'm 41, or well, I'm not 41 anymore. I'm 52, Sean, and when I was 41, I had open heart surgery. I wasn't expecting that. Well,
right.
Guess what? They didn't have any, and they won't touch me with a 10-foot pole, right? So you got to be careful. You got to make sure that you're having those conversations and working your way through and seeing what it is that you need. Last one, choosing a retirement date. Yeah, okay, again, you could pencil it in and then change your mind, of course. So this one, maybe you could make that argument that you could also swap it around. But think about this. If you picked your retirement date and gave notice, well, that's a little different, right? You maybe can't undo that.
Well, and far too often we see people that come into our office and they're like, hey, guess what I did? I put in my papers. Oh, all right. Well, how did you get to that thought process? Well, I was just done working. Oh, okay. And I mean, Daniel in our office is working with somebody right now. And, there's just this thought that my monthly income need is just going to magically change. And it's okay. I'll change my lifestyle and it's all going to work itself out. Well, that may be the case for some people, but for a lot of us, if we just decide on a whim that we're going to quit or whatever without really understanding the ramifications of that decision, that could potentially cause some pretty big problems for us. It's like, I equate it to my daughter's she's trying to decide where she's going to go to college in a couple of years. And in her mind, it's just, I'm going to go cheer in college without any real ramifications of what is it going to take for me to cheer in college, whether it's academically, athletically, that's just, I'm going to cheer. Okay, cool. How are you going to get there, right? What grades do you have to get? What skills do you have to learn when it comes to your athletics? And how are you going to put yourself in the best position to be successful in that in the next 3 to 4 years? Retirement's really no different. It's understand where we want to be, but we also have to have real clarity on what we're going to do in order to get there.
Yeah. I mean, when you're thinking about that retirement date, right, and you put those papers in, you can't necessarily, most of the time, depending on the mechanism that's in place, right, they're not going to be able to undo all the stuff, the paperwork and things that they put into place. And the odds of you going back, like them terminating, or not terminating you, but you leaving and then coming, saying, okay, well, hire me back on, and you lose seniority, if that's even an option, which probably isn't most of the time. And you're just probably not going to get the same job or equivalent job at the same pay either. So
Right.
You just be very, very careful to not make some of these decisions in a vacuum without looking at it as a collective and how it fits in the whole thing. So that's part of the process. That's part of going through the retirement process and planning and getting a strategy laid out. So if you need some help, reach out to the team at Elevated Retirement Group and get started today at elevatemyretirement.com. That's elevatemyretirement.com. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple, Google, Spotify, all that good stuff. You can find us on all those various platforms. Just hit the search or hit the the follow or the heart button, whatever it might be. If you enjoy the podcast, that way you get notified for future episodes. Sean, thanks for hanging out, my friend, and chatting with me a little bit. Can't seem to talk for some reason. That must be my pollen getting me too.
Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. We'll be back with another episode here soon. Don't forget to subscribe to us, as I mentioned before, and we'll catch you next time here on Retirement Elevated with Sean Lee.
Investment advisory services offered through Elevated Capital Advisors, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.